Hi, this is Peggy from Raw. So our guest today is my friend Andrew Grubb. So Andrew is a multitasker, multi-talented man. So he's the former head of innovation at Mercer and he's the current CEO of thinksound. So thank you so much, Andrew, for being here today.
Thank you, Peggy. It's a pleasure.
Do you want to tell us a bit more about thinksound because it's very timely actually that we're chatting.
Absolutely. I think any kind of business manager is a bit dumb if they give up an opportunity to plug their own company.
Exactly.
So ThinkSound is it's a high end audio company, and really we were founded on three principles. One is that people deserve to hear music the way it was meant to be heard. Two, that shouldn't in any way endanger the environment. And three, it shouldn't cost people as much as it does. And so we make a series of personal, I call them personal audio products, so headphones and earbuds and whatnot. Currently, that we're really focused right now on this kind of work from home. The increase in demand for wired earbuds and wired headphones. So we're really looking to satisfy that.
That's amazing. So thank you for taking the time. I know it's a very busy time, and I will use all your past and current experiences in the financial services industry, and let's get going then. So the first question I have for you is, what do you think would be some of the lasting impacts of COVID on the financial services industry?
I think, and now this is something that, hopefully I don't overcomplicate it, but I look at kind of the shift. I'm seeing shifts in commercial and residential real estate. Residential real estate seems to be very, very healthy outside of metro areas, which is sort of an indicator that maybe commercial real estate isn't going to be super healthy in metro areas. I have no kind of, I guess, legitimate validation through published sources for this, but with kind of the decrease in demand for commercial real estate in metro areas, I'm very curious as to how prepared banks are for future default rates and how much these developers are ready for lower cash flows and what that is going to mean, because the commercial banking arm of FIs is a pretty substantial piece of their business.
Yeah, yeah, it's this relationship between interest rate and cap rate that now with this challenge with occupation is going to be an interesting curveball. And to your point, I'm not sure that the banks are prepared for any of that. So staying more on the regulation and policies, what type of new policies or regulation do you think we're going to see coming up in the next few months?
I have no idea, Peggy.
Well, if I piggyback on your comment, that may be new policy regarding losses at bank and potential, I guess, hopefully forgiveness of loans, because that can be a domino effect like in 2008, So
No, it would be really interesting to see if there are new policies introduced around loan forgiveness with respect to commercial entities or personal. It's the long-term savings gap has been something has been an area of concern for a number of years, and I saw, I think it was last year, the World Economic Forum published a stat that the average, I think, North American retiree has enough for 10 years of retirement. And
Mhm.
that's clearly not acceptable. People are living a lot longer than their savings. And and I think what's interesting is a lot of our vehicles are based on income based savings, whether it be a defined benefit pension plan or defined contribution. But our retirement health is a function of our spending. And so if our spending and our income are not in line, clearly there are other problems that we need to deal with. But I'm not sure if there's a set of policies or guidance that can be put in place to kind of encourage people, and encourage, more importantly, banks to promote products that reduce the long-term savings gap.
Yeah, and I know some of them have been looking at actually having retirement products that are actually more aligned with your stage of retirement, because before it was flat, but which doesn't really make sense, because when you just retired, hopefully you're healthy, you're traveling. After, you might start having health issues, so you're not traveling as much, so you're saving money. And after, you can be very ill and need a lot of money to support you. So
Mhm.
this flat approach before was not making sense. So you have, to your point, the gap, but also
Mhm.
the life cycle that wasn't necessarily very well done.
And I
Uh,
think there's been a bit of progress with target date funds, where at least the risk profile changes. You hold the fund for a number of decades, and the risk profile changes as you approach your target date.
exactly. So if we put your economist hat on, so uh, what do you think will be some of the impacts on the global financial stability, global financial order coming from COVID? Obviously, we saw the U.S. elections that were actually definitely driven by COVID. What's your perspective on that?
I think we're going to see, and I don't know that we can tease it out, but I think there's going to be a combination of lagging impacts from previous decisions, i.e., tariffs, and new policies. The thing about tariffs that I think every good economist knows is that they don't really benefit the consumer, in any way, and government subsidies have had to kick in order to kind of keep prices low for the consumer in a lot of types of products in the U.S. Focusing on the U.S., of course.
Yeah.
If those tariffs go away, then we see very little impact to trade, as little impact was seen when the tariffs were introduced. But the government spending can be reduced. Hopefully, this is all in theory, obviously, and spoken, by someone who's taken a handful of economics classes. And I think that is kind of a less obvious lagging kind of influence. I don't know how much of that will influence kind of progressive agendas. It will be very interesting to see, even with, as a small business owner, a lot of our revenue comes in internationally, and so a big kind of cost for us is just the commissions on foreign exchange trading.
Yeah.
And while that's not material for a small company, it could become material very, very quickly. And if I look at kind of what we look to do is we look to reduce our costs that don't add value, and I look at commissions as not adding much value. So if banks want to participate in my spend, they need to be more competitive. And I use TransferWise almost exclusively because their commissions are basically zero, and we get everything at market.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious as to whether that will become a material issue with the rise of Shopify, which is sort of the anti-Amazon. Foreign exchange is going to be left to individuals running small Shopify stores and small e-commerce stores, and there's an opportunity for challenger banks or established banks, whoever it is, to play a really key role in enabling small businesses.
Well, and you're absolutely right, especially when you're SMB, like you're really looking at every cost and making sure that you're not paying any dollar more than you should. And the idea of having bank accounts and different products that don't necessarily suit you and that are more expensive than the competitor, well, why would you accept that? So um, that's a good segue for the next question, actually. So if you look at the COVID crisis as resetting the competitive positioning of the industry, what type of financial organizations do you think will benefit from this crisis?
I think this is going to be driven by user experience. I mean, if we
Mhm.
kind of look at, this is very, personal reflection, and I see it with people all around me. That's my only validation is when the pandemic hit and we had to do more things for ourselves or do things differently, let's say. when you're kind of forced to try something new, you can be a little bit more objective about it, and you can start looking at why certain steps exist within processes of purchasing or whatever. And
Mhm.
so we look to simplify, we look for the simplest option. And if we think about how a lot of people buy groceries, and the UPS trucks are circling my neighborhood like like vultures,
Yeah.
because everybody's ordering things online. People aren't going to stores as much because they found it's a little more convenient. I think that the banks, the institution, regardless of what we're talking about financial institutions, with the simplest user experience and the easiest path to knowledge and solving my problem as a potential customer or current customer, those are the ones that are going to win. The caveat there being, we have to kind of know what we're buying. And I find with a lot of, core banking is fundamentally commoditized. So what is the differentiation model? I don't see it as being a feature. I see it as being an experience.
Yeah, and experience advice, hopefully to really help you, whether as a business owner, whether as an individual, in terms of managing your money, the most efficiently. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we always, as clients, trust that the advice are in our best interest. So the trust factor is definitely what I think FI should focus on, with the crisis. Staying on this FI topic, or traditional FI topic, where do you see them transforming? So you mentioned user experience. That's definitely something that they've been looking at, and that they're looking at. Do you see other areas where these large banks or other financial institutions are trying to transform themselves?
I, I like to use the word trying to transform themselves, because I have a curiosity, and it may be an opinion, but it's really a curiosity, which is, so I've spent a bit of time working as a consultant in kind of the workforce of the future and workforce transformation, fundamentally underpinned and empowered by automation technologies to free up capacity within your workforce. And then the redistribution of that capacity, or how you use that capacity, is the most important consideration, generally for reskilling or upskilling, or recapturing the cost would be the diplomatic definition of headcount reduction. And I think what's interesting is RPA, robotic process automation, is one of the most popular technologies that people are using within automation. And what I'm curious about is, so most banks that I've met with or spoken with are using it primarily for headcount reduction. That's maybe understated. Maybe maybe it's very, very front of mind. And I've just considered that to be a very naive approach. And so my concern is that there's legitimate value sitting in these initiatives, and the value won't be extracted because the work isn't structured in a way that the organization can recapture it, meaning the capacity never gets generated.
Yeah, yeah,
So while these programs look great on paper, if the capacity can't be generated, the transformation can't be fueled. And so my curiosity is, have a lot of banks learned from their early mistakes within automation and are now looking more front office and more, okay, what can we actually do, instead of how can we use this technology to kind of get rid of heads? I'm It's a curiosity, and fundamentally RPA it's kind of a bad sign, because it usually means you can't change your infrastructure.
yeah, yeah,
You have
yeah,
to layer a technology on top of it.
exactly. Yeah.
And so is that really transformation? That's
Mhm.
kind of the question I ask. And so if a company is investing $100 million in an initiative to stay the same but look a little bit different,
Mhm.
I'm curious as to what the long-term impact is on that.
Yeah, and, I've seen my share of projects like that with, you know, um, cost reduction calculated on 20,000 people saving 5 minutes a day. And then you're like, well, 5 minutes a day, I'm going to go to the washroom, I'm going to have a coffee, like I'm not going to do something groundbreaking for the organization. So, yeah, and this idea of, changing something that's already not working, just making it automated is definitely not a brilliant long-term digital
Mhm.
transformation. I agree with you. So last question, the lightest question of them all. So during this last 8 months, I keep saying a few months, but it's been 8 months already. So what type of transformation did you see yourself? So did you become I know you're a big sport guy. So did you change the type of sports you're doing? What did you change in your habits? What is the new Andrew doing in 2020?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I did was stop doing any physical activity.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and not I wouldn't say intentionally, but then every week that went by, I felt better and better and better. And so I realized that I kind of haven't been treating myself very well. And
Right.
so I've really taken, I found there's kind of two outlets that I've found. So I'm reading a lot more and feeding my mind a lot more. And also I learned a lot about woodworking. So
Oh,
things that were completely divergent. So I wanted something to keep my mind busy on kind of, let's say like a converging skill set. So I learn more and more and more about a very specific skill. And then I also wanted to activate very intentionally like a divergent skill set, which is reading a book I never would have written or never would have read. And I've found that the two have really, I go through phases of really not knowing what the hell my day is going to look like
yeah.
to feeling very rewarded for spending my time the way I did.
Oh, that's wonderful. Like I think I was I was trying to make sure that when I go on the other side of that crisis, I can say, okay, this is the things I've done. I just didn't just poke my nose and watch by the window. And not just the work stuff, but also, like the type of skills that you've always wanted to have.
Mm,
You've never spent time, or you're thinking, oh, I'll do that at some point. So I started to learn Spanish,
that's
uh,
amazing.
with like an audiobook. God knows that, like it's definitely not massive progress, but I started playing tennis or doing yoga, Kundalini. So I'm like, at least like you, when I'm on the other side, I'll be able to have a few things that I'm proud of.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
that is
You know
not
what?
just work.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I think my inner hippie came out and said, what are we doing? Why aren't we chilling out more? Why aren't we spending more time with friends and family and nature?
Yeah.
And I like, it's funny how people always talk about these as COVID projects. So many people had COVID projects going on, but you don't see people, at least I don't, I see people, executing all these COVID projects, but they still spend the same amount of time with their family and the same amount of time working. And it
Mhm.
kind of dawned on me, these are really just commuting projects. We've taken
Yeah.
our commuting time and
Yeah.
we've repurposed it. Something that added zero value to our lives except transporting our body from one location to another has now allowed a lot of people that I know at least to kind of fuel their life, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and fuel it intelligently versus binge watching on Netflix, because I
Exactly.
think guys.
Well, I think we've all done a bit of that.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of some binge watching, but I'm trying to balance my binge watching with some things that long term will be more rewarding than, I don't know what things I'm supposed to watch. I'm always watching old stuff. So. But thank you so much, Andrew. It was great to catch up, and it was lovely to get your perspective, and good luck with the new venture, which I know it's not a new venture, but your new venture.
Thank you very
And
much.
looking forward to being one of your first customers.
Absolutely. We would love to have you.
Okay, I will do a video with it.
Oh, I might have a couple samples I can,
Okay.
actually, I have one sample that if you want to,
Okay.
a little partnership.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be an influencer. Okay. Thank you so much, Andrew. Have a great day.
Take care, Peggy.
Take care.
Have
Thank
fun.
you.